My name is Alois Carter, and I am 72 years old. The night my son looked me in the eyes and said, "Mama, you're done for good," something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Quiet. And that scared him more than tears ever could. It happened in my own living room. The same room where I rocked him to sleep as a baby. The same room where I helped him with homework. The same room where I prayed for him when he stopped coming home on time. That night, he stood over me, arms crossed, shaking his head like I was already gone. "You can't do anything anymore," he said. "Just sit down before you hurt yourself." I was standing. I remember that clearly. Standing on my own 2 feet. My knees hurt, my back ached, but I was standing. "I'm fine," I told him. He laughed. Not loud. Not kind. That laugh people use when they think they've won. "You don't even know what day it is half the time," he said. "This is over for you." Over. That was the word. Before I go any further, let me pause for a moment. If stories about strength, betrayal, and second chances touch your heart, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful grandma story like mine. And please tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know who is standing with me today. Because what I'm about to tell you, it might sound familiar. My son's name is Marcus. He is 46 years old. Tall, strong, loud when he wants to be. And for the past 3 years, he had slowly taken over my life without asking. At first, it sounded like care. "Let me handle that bill, Mama. You don't need to worry about money. I'll drive you, it's safer." I said thank you. I trusted him. That was my mistake. That night, he had just finished going through my mail. Again. I watched him from my chair as he opened envelopes that had my name on them. "Marcus," I said softly, "that's private." He didn't even look up. "You don't need to see this stuff anymore," he replied. "It just confuses you." I felt something twist in my chest. "I am not confused," I said. That's when he finally looked at me. And smiled. A small smile. A cruel one. "Mama," he said slowly, like he was talking to a child, "you had your time." Had. Past tense. "You don't run things anymore," he continued. "You should be grateful I'm still here." Still here. As if my life depended on his mood. I stood up then. Slowly. Carefully. "I raised you," I said. "Don't talk to me like that." That's when he said it. The sentence that changed everything. "You're done for good," Marcus said. "Just accept it." The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking. Tick. 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 I sat back down. Not because I was weak. Because I didn't want him to see what was happening inside me. That night, after he went to bed, I stayed awake. I stared at the ceiling. My heart felt heavy, but my mind was sharp. He thought I was finished. He thought I had nothing left. He was wrong. But the truth is, I didn't know how I would begin again yet. All I knew was this. I could not end like this. Not like furniture in my own house. Not like a child who needed permission to breathe. Not like a woman whose life was already written in past tense. The next morning, Marcus slept late. I woke up early. The house was quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and looked at my hands. Old hands. Strong hands. Hands that had worked, cooked, cleaned, held bobbies, wiped tears, and signed checks for decades. "These hands are not done," I whispered. I opened the drawer where Marcus kept my papers. The one he said I didn't need access to anymore. My heart started beating faster. What I saw inside that drawer made me realize just how much he had already taken. And that realization would lead me to make a decision that Marcus never saw coming. Because the next morning, I would not end. I would begin again. Stronger. I did not sleep that night. Not because of pain. Not because of fear. But because my mind refused to shut down. Marcus's words kept replaying in my head, over and over again, like a broken record. You're done for good. You had your time. You don't run things anymore. Each sentence felt like a hand pressing down on my chest. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock in the hallway. The house was quiet, but my thoughts were loud. For the first time in years, I wasn't tired. I was alert. I remember thinking about the first day I brought Marcus home from the hospital. He was so small, so quiet. I had held him against my chest and whispered, "I'll protect you." I never imagined the day would come when I would need protection from him. Sometime after midnight, I got out of bed. Slowly, carefully. I didn't want to wake him. Not because I was afraid of his temper, but because I wanted this moment to belong to me alone. I walked into the kitchen and sat at the table. Moonlight came in through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. My cup of tea had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't care. My eyes kept drifting back to that drawer. The drawer Marcus had claimed as his own. The drawer he said I didn't need to touch anymore. I stood up and walked over to it. My hand hovered over the handle. What if you don't like what you find? A voice inside me whispered. Another voice answered back, stronger this time. What if you already don't like what you've lost? I pulled the drawer open. Inside were neatly stacked folders. Bills. Bank letters. Medical papers. Documents with my name, printed clearly across the top. My stomach tightened. I started pulling them out, one by one, spreading them across the table like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was missing. There were overdue notices I had never seen. Account statements I didn't recognize. A letter from the bank that made my hands shake when I read it. Authorized user, Marcus Carter. Primary decision maker, Marcus Carter. I read it again. And again. My name was there, but smaller, secondary, like a footnote in my own life. That's not right, I whispered. I had worked for years. I had paid into those accounts. I had trusted my son. And he had quietly moved himself into the center of everything. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the lies. There were medical forms too. Forms that said I had agreed to evaluations. Forms that said I had trouble remembering things. Forms that said decisions could be made on my behalf. My hands started to shake. I never signed this, I said out loud. My signature was there. Or at least, something that looked like it. I sat back in the chair, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it would wake Marcus. So this was what he meant when he said I was done. He wasn't just talking. He was preparing. I stayed at that table until the sky began to lighten. When morning finally came, I felt like I had lived a lifetime in one night. Marcus slept in. Of course he did. He always slept well after taking control. I made breakfast quietly. Eggs, toast, tea. The same breakfast I had made for years. But something was different now. I was watching, listening, paying attention. When Marcus finally came into the kitchen, he looked relaxed, confident, like a man who believed everything was handled. "Morning," he said casually, grabbing a mug. "Morning," I replied. He glanced at the table. "Why are my files out?" he asked. I looked up at him. "They're not your files," I said. He froze. Just for a second. Then he laughed. "Mama, don't start," he said. "You were confused last night." I folded my hands neatly in front of me. "I wasn't confused," I said. "I was quiet." He sighed and sat down. "Listen," he said, rubbing his forehead. "You don't need to worry about paperwork. That's why I help you." "You didn't help," I replied. "You replaced me." His eyes narrowed. You don't understand how things work anymore, he said. I took a slow breath. I understand enough to know you crossed a line, I said. His voice hardened. Be careful, he said. You're starting to sound paranoid. There it was. The word he used when he wanted to shut me down. Paranoid. Crazy. Confused. I met his eyes and didn't look away. No, I said calmly. I'm starting to sound informed. He pushed his chair back. I don't have time for this, he snapped. I'm going to work. He grabbed his keys and stopped at the door. We'll talk later, he said, when you've calmed down. The door closed behind him. And for the first time, his words didn't shrink me. They sharpened me. As soon as he left, I moved. Not rushed. Not panicked. Purposeful. I gathered every document from that drawer and placed them neatly into a bag. I grabbed my purse, my coat, and my shoes. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I drove myself to the bank. I hadn't driven in months. Marcus always said it was safer if he did. But the car started just fine. So did I. The bank felt colder than I remembered. Bright lights, quiet voices, the smell of paper and polish. I stood in line and waited my turn. When I reached the counter, a young man smiled politely. How can I help you today? He asked. I need to speak about my accounts, I said. He typed my name into the computer. His smile faded slightly. Oh, he said, you're not listed as the main account holder. I know, I replied. That's the problem. He hesitated. Your son handles these accounts, he said. Yes, I replied, without my permission. He looked uncomfortable. I'll get a manager, he said. While I waited, doubt tried to creep back in. What if Marcus is right? What if you're too late? What if they don't believe you? I straightened my back. I believed me. The manager was a woman around my age. She sat down across from me and listened as I explained everything. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Mrs. Carter, she said, you did the right thing coming in. My chest tightened. You believe me? I asked. She smiled gently. I see this more often than you think, she said. She explained the process. Reviews, paperwork, time. It wouldn't be fixed overnight. But it could be fixed. That mattered. When I left the bank, the sun was high in the sky. I sat in my car and let out a long breath I didn't realize I had been holding. I wasn't done. But I wasn't finished either. I drove to a small cafe afterward. I ordered tea and sat by the window, watching people pass by. For years, I had watched life from behind my own walls. Now I was watching it move around me. And I was still part of it. When I got home, Marcus's car wasn't there yet. I used that time wisely. I packed a small bag. Not everything. Just what mattered. My ID. My checkbook. Some clothes. Photos. Options. Marcus came home that evening and noticed right away. What's this? He demanded, pointing at the bag. Preparation, I said. For what? He snapped. For myself, I replied. His face changed. Anger flickered across it. You're making a mistake, he said. You can't do this alone. I looked at him. I already am, I said. That night he slept. I didn't. I lay awake thinking about what came next. I didn't know exactly how I would begin again. But I knew this much. I was not done. I was just waking up. And Marcus had no idea how strong I was about to become. I did not tell Marcus what I planned to do next. Not because I was hiding, but because for the first time in my life, I did not feel the need to explain myself. That night after our argument, he slept soundly. I could hear his deep breathing from the hallway, steady and careless, like a man certain the ground beneath him would never move. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Every small sound felt louder now. A pipe clicking, the wind brushing against the window, my own heartbeat strong and stubborn. I placed my hand on my chest. "I am still here," I whispered. And this time, I believed it. In the early hours of the morning, before the sun came up, I got dressed quietly. I chose simple clothes, comfortable slacks, a soft blouse, flat shoes. Clothes Marcus always called old-fashioned. They felt like armor now. I packed my small bag again, carefully checking that everything important was inside. My ID, my bank papers, a notebook, my phone charger. I paused at the doorway to my bedroom and looked around. This room had seen me cry in silence. It had seen me wait. It had seen me doubt myself. I nodded once, as if closing a chapter in a book. Then I walked out. I didn't leave the house completely. Not yet. Instead, I drove across town to Helen's house. Helen was my younger sister, only 4 years younger than me, but she had always lived louder, braver. She was the kind of woman who spoke her mind and didn't apologize for it. We had drifted apart over the years. Marcus didn't like her. Said she filled my head with nonsense. That alone should have told me something. Helen answered the door in her robe, hair wrapped in a scarf, eyes squinting with surprise. "Eloise," she said, "what are you doing here so early?" I opened my mouth to speak. And then my voice broke. "I need help," I said. She didn't ask questions. She pulled me inside and wrapped her arms around me. "Oh, baby," she whispered, "what has he done now?" We sat at her kitchen table with coffee between us. I told her everything. The drawer. The papers. The bank. The way Marcus spoke to me like I was already gone. Helen listened without interrupting, her face growing harder with every word. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "That boy forgot where he came from," she said. I stared at my cup. "I raised him," I whispered. "Yes, you did," she replied firmly, "and that doesn't give him the right to erase you." Helen reached across the table and took my hand. "You can stay here," she said, "as long as you need." I hesitated. "What about Marcus?" I asked. Helen snorted. "He can deal with it," she said, "for once." That sentence settled deep inside me. For once. I stayed with Helen that day. I turned my phone off. Not out of fear. Out of choice. I helped her fold laundry. We watched a silly show in the afternoon. For the first time in a long time, I laughed without checking to see who was listening. But even in the comfort, tension lived in my chest. I knew Marcus would notice. I knew he would react. By evening, I turned my phone back on. I had 7 missed calls. 5 from Marcus. 1 from a number I didn't recognize. 1 from my church friend, Lorna. My stomach tightened. I listened to Marcus's voicemail first. "Mama," he said, his voice sharp, "where are you? You can't just disappear like this. Call me back right now." The second message was worse. "This is exactly what I mean. You're acting unstable." I deleted them, without listening to the rest. Helen noticed my shaking hands. "He's scared," she said. "No," I replied. "He's angry." She nodded. "Because you moved without his permission." That word again. Permission. I realized how deeply it had been carved into my thinking. That night, I slept in Helen's guest room. It smelled like clean sheets and lavender. The ceiling fan hummed softly above me. I lay awake for a while, thinking about Marcus as a little boy. The way he used to run to me when he scraped his knee. The way he cried when he was scared. The way he trusted me completely. Somewhere along the way, that trust had turned into ownership. And ownership had turned into control. The next morning, Helen insisted on coming with me. "To do what?" I asked. "To take your next step," she said. She drove. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands folded tightly in my lap. We went to the doctor's office. Not because Marcus said I needed it. Because I wanted clarity. The doctor was a calm woman with kind eyes. She asked me questions slowly, carefully. About my memory. About my health. About my daily life. I answered honestly. At the end of the appointment, she smiled. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "there is nothing wrong with your mind." Tears filled my eyes. "Nothing," I asked. "You are sharp," she said. "You are aware, and you are capable of making your own decisions." I let out a shaky laugh. "I knew it," Helen said proudly. The doctor frowned gently. "Has someone been telling you otherwise?" she asked. I nodded. She sighed. "That happens more often than you'd think," she said, "especially to older women." She wrote a note. Official. Clear. Stating that I was mentally sound and capable. When she handed it to me, it felt heavier than paper. It felt like proof. On the drive back, Helen glanced at me. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That Marcus won't like this," I replied. She smiled. "Good," she said. "That means it's working." That afternoon, Marcus showed up at Helen's house. Uninvited. He knocked hard, like he owned the door. Helen opened it and crossed her arms. "What do you want?" she asked. Marcus pushed past her. "Mama," he said, spotting me on the couch. "What is going on?" I stood up slowly. "I'm taking a break," I said. "A break from what?" he snapped. "Reality." Helen stepped between us. "Watch your mouth," she warned. "This doesn't concern you," Marcus shot back. Helen laughed. "Oh, it does now," she said. "You crossed a line." Marcus turned back to me. "You need to come home," he said. "People are starting to ask questions." That sentence told me everything. Not he was worried. He was afraid of being seen. "I'm not ready," I said. He shook his head. "You're confused," he said again. I reached into my bag and pulled out the doctor's note. I held it up. "I'm not," I said. He stared at it. His face changed. "What is this?" he asked. "Proof," I replied, "that you lied." Helen added, "And if you keep pushing, you're going to have a bigger problem than questions." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You think this changes anything?" he said. "Yes," I replied, "everything." He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. In a way, he didn't. Because the woman standing in front of him was no longer waiting for approval. "I'm not done," I said calmly. "I'm beginning." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, and walked out. That night, after he left, my body shook. Not from fear. From release. Helen hugged me tightly. "You did good," she said. I nodded. "I took my first step away from him," I whispered. And I knew it was true. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling again. But this time, my thoughts were clear. Marcus thought I was done for good. But I was only just starting. And the next step I took would change everything between us. Marcus did not give up after that day. I knew he wouldn't. Men like my son do not stop when they lose control. They only change how they fight. The morning after he stormed out of Helen's house, my phone started ringing before the sun fully rose. I watched it buzz on the bedside table, again and again, until the screen went dark. Then it buzzed again. I did not answer. Not because I was afraid, but because I was learning something new. Silence can be a choice. Helen knocked softly on the door. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "just listening." She smiled knowingly. "That's good," she said. "Listen carefully, you'll hear who people really are." By mid-morning, the calls turned into messages. From Marcus. From relatives. From people I hadn't spoken to in years. The words were different, but the message was the same. Your son is worried. You shouldn't stress him like this. Marcus says you're not well. Why are you embarrassing the family? I sat at the kitchen table, reading them slowly, one by one. My chest hurt. Not because I believed them, but because I recognized the pattern. This wasn't concern. This was pressure. Helen leaned over my shoulder and read one of the messages. They're doing his work for him, she said. Yes, I replied quietly, and he knows it. That afternoon, Marcus showed up again. This time, he did not knock. He rang the bell over and over until Helen opened the door. What do you want? She demanded. Marcus stood there with his hands raised, pretending calm. I just want to talk to my mother, he said. I stepped into the hallway. You can talk, I said, but you won't control. His eyes flicked to Helen, then back to me. See, he said, she's turning you against me. No, I replied, you did that yourself. He walked inside without waiting for permission. He looked around the house like he was inspecting it. This isn't where you belong, he said. I crossed my arms. Belonging is not ownership, I said. That sentence surprised even me. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. You don't understand what you're doing, he said. People are starting to talk. I nodded. Good, I replied. His head snapped up. Good, he repeated. Yes, I said. The truth sounds loud when it's been quiet for too long. His voice softened then. Dangerously soft. Mama, he said, I'm just trying to help you. I tilted my head. Then why did you hide my papers? I asked. He hesitated. Why did you put your name above mine? I continued. Silence. Why did you tell people I was confused? I asked. His jaw tightened. You're remembering things wrong, he said. There it was again. The final card. Gaslighting. I reached into my bag and pulled out copies of the bank letters and the doctor's note. I'm not, I said calmly. He stared at the papers like they were poison. You went behind my back, he said. No, I replied. I went in front of myself. Helen let out a quiet laugh. Marcus shot her a look. You've poisoned her mind, he snapped. Helen stepped forward. I woke her up, she corrected. Marcus stood up suddenly. You think you can live without me, he said, his voice rising. Who's going to take care of you? I met his eyes. I will, I said. He shook his head. You're too old to start over, he said. I felt something rise in my chest. Not anger. Resolve. I'm too old to be erased, I replied. That was when his mask slipped. You're selfish, he snapped, after everything I've done for you. I took a slow breath. You didn't do those things for me, I said. You did them instead of me. The room went quiet. Helen's eyes widened slightly. Marcus looked stunned. He turned toward the door. You'll regret this, he said. I nodded. I regret staying silent longer, I replied. He slammed the door behind him. After he left, my knees felt weak. I sat down slowly. Helen poured me a glass of water. You held your ground, she said. Yes, I replied, but he's not done. She nodded. No, she agreed. He'll escalate. She was right. The next move came quietly. 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail. Not from Marcus. From a legal office. My heart pounded as I opened it. Marcus had filed paperwork. He was requesting temporary authority over my decisions. Claiming concern. Claiming instability. Claiming I needed help. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I laughed. A short, bitter sound. He's desperate, Helen said. Yes, I replied, and dangerous. That night, doubt returned. Louder than before. What if this gets worse? What if he wins? What if you can't handle this? I sat alone in the guest room and let the fear speak. Then I answered it. I have proof, I said out loud. I have witnesses. And I have myself. The next morning, I made a decision. A big one. I'm not hiding anymore, I told Helen. She looked at me carefully. What does that mean? She asked. It means, I said, I'm getting help before he forces it. We spent the day making calls. Legal aid. Senior advocacy groups. A counselor recommended by my doctor. Every call felt like another brick laid in a wall of protection. I wasn't attacking Marcus. I was defending myself. That afternoon, a woman from an advocacy group called me back. Mrs. Carter, she said gently, what you're describing is financial and emotional control. I swallowed. There's a name for it, I asked. Yes, she replied, and it's not your fault. Tears filled my eyes. For the first time, someone named the thing that had been stealing my life. That night, I slept deeply. Not because the danger was gone, but because I knew what I was facing. And knowledge is power. Marcus thought I was done. Then he thought he could scare me back into silence. What he didn't understand was that every move he made only pushed me further forward. And soon, I would take a step he could never undo. The moment Marcus tried to make his control official, something inside me hardened. Not my heart, my resolve. Up until then, I had been reacting, responding to his moves, bracing myself for his words, preparing for his next attempt to pull me back under his shadow. But when that letter arrived, stamped and serious, I understood something very clearly. This was no longer just family trouble. This was a line. And once a line is crossed, you don't step back. You step forward with witnesses. I read the letter again that morning, sitting at Helen's kitchen table with the sun pouring in through the window. The words were polite, careful, dressed up to sound reasonable. Concern for well-being. Temporary authority. For her own good. Those were Marcus's favorite words. For your own good. I folded the letter slowly and placed it beside my cup of tea. He thinks paper makes him powerful, I said quietly. Helen nodded. He thinks silence makes you weak. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But you're not silent anymore. That day, we did not rush. That mattered too. Marcus always rushed me, pushed decisions, pressured answers, made everything feel urgent so I wouldn't have time to think. I was done with urgency. I was choosing clarity. The first call we made was to legal aid, the same office the advocacy woman had mentioned. A calm voice answered. Legal support services, she said. I took a breath. My name is Alois Carter, I said. My son is trying to take control of my life. There was no shock in her voice. Only focus. Tell me what's been happening, she replied. I told her everything. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just honest. The drawer. The bank accounts. The doctor's visit. The letters. The way Marcus spoke to me like I was already gone. When I finished, there was a pause. Then she said something that stayed with me. You are not late, she said. You are right on time. My throat tightened. She explained my options. Slowly. Clearly. She told me what Marcus could do, and more importantly, what he could not do. He cannot take authority without proof, she said. And from what you've described, you have proof on your side. I looked at Helen. She smiled. That afternoon, we started building my paper trail. Every document copied. Every message saved. Every voicemail recorded. Not because I wanted to fight Marcus, but because I wanted to stand. As we worked, memories surfaced. Moments I had brushed aside for years. The way Marcus corrected me in front of people. The way he spoke about me instead of to me. The way he decided things and called it help. I wrote everything down in a notebook. Dates. Words. Feelings. My story. In my handwriting. Halfway through the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Marcus. I stared at the screen. Helen raised an eyebrow. You don't have to answer, she said. I know, I replied. I answered anyway. Yes, I said calmly. What are you doing? Marcus demanded. Living, I replied. He exhaled sharply. I got a call, he said. Someone said you're talking to lawyers. I am, I said. You don't need that, he snapped. This is family. I laughed softly. Family doesn't erase you, I said. His voice dropped. You're making a big mistake, he said. You won't win. I'm not trying to win, I replied. I'm trying to exist. Silence. Then anger. You're being manipulated, he said. I closed my eyes. No, I replied. I was being controlled. There's a difference. He hung up. Not with a goodbye. With a click. That told me everything. That evening, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. Not because the danger was gone, but because I wasn't alone in it anymore. The next day, I went back to the bank. This time with documents. This time with clarity. The same manager met with me again. I want independent access restored, I said. Immediately. She reviewed the papers carefully. You have every right, she said. When she slid the confirmation across the desk, my hands trembled. Not from fear. From relief. When I walked out of the bank, I stood still on the sidewalk for a long moment. Cars passed. People hurried by. The world hadn't stopped. But something inside me had shifted permanently. Marcus noticed the shift right away. That evening, he came to Helen's house again. This time, he didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He pleaded. Mama, he said, standing in the doorway, this is getting out of hand. I looked at him. Only because you lost control, I replied. He shook his head. You're tearing this family apart, he said. I stepped forward. No, I said. I'm refusing to disappear quietly. His eyes flashed. You think those papers make you strong? He asked. I answered softly. No, I was strong before, I just forgot. He looked around the room, like he was searching for allies. Helen didn't move. Neither did I. For the first time, Marcus looked unsure. The next few days were tense. Marcus didn't stop trying. Messages came through other people. Relatives. Church members. Old friends. Some worried. Some judgmental. Some curious. I answered only one question. Are you okay? Yes, I said. I finally am. One afternoon, the advocacy woman called me back. Mrs. Carter, she said, we've reviewed everything. I held my breath. You are not only capable, she continued, you are being targeted because you are. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Thank you, I whispered. That night, alone in Helen's guest room, I thought about Marcus. About the boy I raised. About the man he became. And I understood something painful but true. Love does not excuse harm. And motherhood does not require self-erasure. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. I am still here, I said aloud. And this time, the room answered back with silence. Strong. Unshakable. Marcus thought I was done. Then he thought he could scare me. Then he thought paperwork would finish me. But the ground beneath him was cracking. And soon, he would feel it give way completely. Marcus did not explode when things began to slip from his hands. That surprised me. I expected shouting, accusations, threats. Instead, he grew quiet. And that silence felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at Helen's kitchen table, writing in my notebook, when my phone buzzed with a message from my church friend, Lorna. "Eloise, did you know Marcus called a meeting about you?" My pen stopped mid-sentence. "A meeting?" I typed back slowly. "What kind of meeting?" Her reply came quickly. "Family and church elders. He says he's worried about your condition." My chest tightened. So this was his next move. If he couldn't control me privately, he would question me publicly. Helen read the message over my shoulder. "He's trying to shape the story," she said. "Yes," I replied, "before I can tell it myself." I closed my notebook. "Then I won't let him," I said. That afternoon, I made calls. Not angry ones. Clear ones. I called my sister. My cousin Denise. 2 women from church I trusted. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I told them the truth. Slowly. Simply. "I'm okay," I said, "but my son has been making decisions without my consent." There was silence on the other end of most calls. Then questions. Then concern, not for Marcus, but for me. That mattered. The meeting happened 2 days later. I didn't attend. Not because I was afraid, but because I refused to be discussed like a problem. Still, word came back to me. Marcus spoke first. He used calm words. Careful words. "She's confused. She's under stress. She doesn't realize what she's doing." But then someone asked a question Marcus hadn't prepared for. "Has Eloise said she's confused?" Another followed. "Has a doctor said that?" And another. "Why isn't she here to speak for herself?" The room shifted. I could feel it even from a distance. That evening, Lorna came by Helen's house. She looked shaken. "I owe you an apology," she said as soon as she sat down. "For what?" I asked. "For believing him," she replied. "For not asking you first." She took my hands in hers. "He wasn't worried," she said. "He was angry you weren't listening anymore." I nodded. "That's the truth," I said. The next day, Marcus called me again. I answered. "Why didn't you show up?" he asked sharply. "I wasn't invited," I replied calmly. He scoffed. "You knew about it." "Yes," I said, "and I chose not to attend." "You made me look bad," he snapped. I closed my eyes. "You did that yourself," I said. His voice cracked slightly. "You're turning people against me." "No," I replied. "I'm letting them see me." Silence followed. Then he said something that told me everything. "You don't understand how dangerous this is." I smiled softly. "I understand exactly," I said. "That's why I'm not stopping." After that call, something strange happened. The messages slowed. The pressure eased. Not because Marcus stopped trying, but because his words stopped working. One afternoon, I received an envelope in the mail. Not forwarded. Not hidden. Addressed directly to me. Inside was a formal notice. Petition under review. No temporary authority granted at this time. I read it twice. Then a third time. My hands trembled. Not from fear. From relief. Helen hugged me tightly. "He's losing," she said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "He's being seen." And that was worse for him than losing. That night, I thought about the years I spent explaining myself to Marcus. Why I needed money. Why I wanted to visit friends. Why I felt uncomfortable with certain decisions. I had mistaken patience for peace. And control for care. The next confrontation came unexpectedly. I was grocery shopping when I saw him. Marcus stood at the end of the aisle, staring at me like he didn't believe I was real. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked toward me. "Mama," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I placed the bread in my cart. "We can talk," I said, "but not here." His jaw tightened. "You're avoiding me," he said. No, I replied. I'm protecting myself. He lowered his voice. You don't have to do this, he said. We can fix things. I met his eyes. Fixing means listening, I said. You never did. People passed by us, unaware. Marcus glanced around, uncomfortable. This wasn't his ground anymore. I did everything for you, he said through clenched teeth. I nodded. And you decided everything for me, I replied. That was the difference. He stepped back. You think you're better without me, he said. I think I'm whole, I replied. He had no answer for that. That night, alone in bed, I felt something settle inside me. The fear was gone. In its place was certainty. Marcus's control wasn't collapsing because I fought him. It was collapsing because I stopped feeding it. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even Helen. I'm going to speak, I said. Where? She asked. At church, I replied, in my own words. She studied me carefully. You ready? She asked. I nodded. Yes, I said, because silence was never my weakness, it was my training. As I prepared what I would say, I felt calm. Not angry. Not bitter. Just honest. Marcus thought I was done for good. Then he thought he could finish the job with paperwork and whispers. But his control was collapsing. And the more light that touched it, the faster it crumbled. The morning I decided to speak, my hands did not shake. That surprised me. I had imagined this moment many times in my head. I thought my voice would crack, my knees would weaken, my heart would pound so loudly everyone could hear it. I thought fear would rush back in and remind me why I stayed quiet for so long. But when I woke up that Sunday morning, there was no fear. Only clarity. I stood in front of the mirror in Helen's guest room and looked at myself carefully. Not the way Marcus looked at me. Not the way people looked at me when they thought I was fragile. I looked at myself the way I used to when I was younger, steady, honest, and unafraid of my own reflection. I will not shrink today, I said out loud. The woman in the mirror nodded back at me. Helen knocked on the door. Ready? She asked. I took a deep breath. Yes, I replied. I've been ready longer than I knew. The drive to church felt different than it used to. For years, sitting in that pew had meant quiet listening, smiling politely, keeping family matters private, swallowing words that pressed against my chest. Today, I was not there to hide. I was there to speak. The church parking lot was already filling up when we arrived. I saw familiar faces, neighbors, old friends, women who had prayed beside me for decades. I also saw Marcus's car. My stomach tightened just a little. But I didn't turn around. Inside, the church smelled the same as always. Clean wood, old books, and something warm from the kitchen down the hall. Hymns played softly as people settled into their seats. Marcus sat 3 rows ahead of us. He didn't turn around. I wondered if he could feel it already, that shift in the air, the one that happens when truth is about to step forward. The service began like any other. Songs. Prayer. Announcements. I listened, but my mind stayed calm, focused. When the pastor stood up to speak, my heart beat a little faster. Near the end, he said, "Before we close, is there anyone who would like to share a testimony or a word today?" Silence filled the room. That familiar silence. The kind I had lived in for years. I stood up. The sound of my shoes against the floor echoed louder than I expected. Heads turned. Whispers stopped. I felt Helen's hand squeeze mine briefly before letting go. I walked slowly to the front. Every step felt heavy and light at the same time. When I reached the podium, I rested my hands on it and looked out at the room. So many faces. Some kind. Some curious. Some uncomfortable. Marcus finally turned around. His eyes widened. "My name is Alois Carter," I began. My voice was steady. "I have been part of this church for more than 40 years. A few heads nodded. I raised my children here, I continued. I prayed here, I stayed quiet here. A pause. And today, I'm done staying quiet. The room went still. I could hear my own breathing. I want to speak for myself, I said. Not as someone's mother, not as someone's problem, but as a woman who is still here. I didn't look at Marcus when I spoke. I looked at the people who had known me for years. I was told I was confused, I said. I was told I could not manage my own life anymore. I was told I should step aside and let someone else decide everything for me. Murmurs moved through the room. I believed that for a while, I admitted, because I was tired, because I trusted the wrong voice. I took a breath. But I am not confused, I said clearly. I am not broken, and I am not done. Someone in the back whispered, Amen. I continued. My son believed he was helping me, I said. But help does not take your voice. Love does not hide your papers. Care does not speak over you. I paused. Control does. The word landed hard. I saw people shift in their seats. I saw understanding bloom in some faces. I saw discomfort in others. That was okay. Truth does that. I am standing here today to say this, I said. If you ever hear someone speak about me instead of to me, please come ask me. I smiled gently. I am still capable of answering. For the first time, I looked directly at Marcus. He was pale. His jaw was tight. I didn't glare. I didn't accuse. I simply looked. I love my son, I said, but love does not mean silence, and motherhood does not mean disappearing. The room was quiet again. Not tense. Respectful. I stepped back from the podium. My legs felt weak now, but my chest felt strong. As I walked back to my seat, people reached out to touch my arm, whispering soft words. I didn't know. I'm proud of you. Thank you for speaking. Marcus didn't move. He didn't speak. He stared straight ahead. After the service, people gathered around me. Questions came gently this time. Not accusations. Not doubt. Concern. Support. One woman held my hands and said, "You were brave." I shook my head. "No," I said, "I was honest." Marcus approached last. He waited until we were standing alone near the exit. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. "I told the truth," I replied. "You embarrassed me," he said. I met his eyes. "You erased me," I said. "This is what happens when erasure ends." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. People were watching. Not whispering. Watching. "You didn't have to do this," he said finally. "Yes," I replied. "I did." He walked away without another word. I didn't chase him. I didn't call out. I let him go. That afternoon, Helen and I sat on the porch in silence. The sun was warm on our faces. "You changed something today," she said. I nodded. "I changed myself," I replied. That night, as I lay in bed, exhaustion washed over me. The good kind. The earned kind. I closed my eyes and felt something new settle in my chest. Freedom. Marcus thought I was done for good. He thought silence meant weakness. But silence had been teaching me all along. And now that I had spoken, nothing could put me back in that quiet place again. The days after I spoke at church felt unreal. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just different. People looked at me differently now, not with pity, not with that soft, careful voice people use when they think you are fatting. They looked at me like I was solid, like I was present, like I belonged. That alone changed everything. On Monday morning, my phone rang early. It was my cousin Denise. "I just wanted to hear your voice," she said. "After yesterday." I smiled. "I'm still here," I replied. "I know," she said. "I just didn't realize how strong you were." I sat quietly for a moment. I didn't either, I said honestly. By Tuesday, word had spread further than I expected. Not gossip. Truth. People were no longer asking Marcus what was wrong with me. They were asking me what I needed. That shift was small, but powerful. And Marcus felt it. He didn't call. That worried me more than his anger ever had. Because when control stops working, it doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it retreats to plan. Helen noticed it too. "He's too quiet," she said one evening as we washed dishes together. "Yes," I replied, "and that means something is coming." That something came in the form of a letter. Official. Heavy. The kind of envelope that makes your heart beat faster before you even open it. I sat at the table and took a deep breath. "It's okay," I told myself. "Whatever it is, you can face it." I opened it carefully. Inside was a notice. Marcus had withdrawn his petition. But not because he suddenly understood me. Because it wasn't working. The words were polite. Legal. Cold. But I understood what they really meant. He was stepping back. Not in peace. In defeat. Helen let out a breath when I showed her. "He lost," she said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "He let go." There was a difference. Loss makes people angry. Letting go makes them empty. That afternoon, I went for a walk alone. I needed space to think. The sun was bright, and the air smelled like fresh grass. Children laughed somewhere nearby. Life was moving, and for once I was moving with it instead of watching from behind glass. As I walked, memories surfaced. Not painful ones. Honest ones. The first time Marcus told me I shouldn't drive anymore. The first time he answered a question meant for me. The first time he told someone, "She doesn't remember things well." I remembered how each moment felt small on its own. How easy it was to excuse. How dangerous it became when added together. By the time I returned to Helen's house, I knew what my next step had to be. Not reaction. Decision. That evening, I called Marcus. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. He answered on the second ring. "Yes," he said cautiously. "We need to talk," I said. There was a pause. "About what?" he asked. "About the end," I replied. We met the next day. In a public place. A quiet cafe not far from where he worked. I chose it on purpose. Control prefers closed doors. Truth does not. He arrived early. Sat stiffly. Didn't order anything. I arrived on time and ordered tea. I didn't rush. That alone seemed to unsettle him. "I withdrew the paperwork," he said quickly, "so this can stop." "This doesn't stop because you withdrew paperwork," I replied calmly. "It stops because I decide it does." He frowned. "You're being dramatic," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm being final." He leaned forward. "You really think you can do this without me?" he asked. I looked at him carefully. Not as my son. As a man who had mistaken power for love. "Yes," I said, "I already am." He sighed heavily. "You embarrassed me," he said again. I nodded. "You embarrassed yourself," I replied. "I just stopped hiding it." Silence fell between us. He stared at the table. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Not anger. Fear. Not of me. Of losing the version of me that never pushed back. "I don't know how to be your son if I'm not in charge," he admitted quietly. That sentence broke something open. I softened, but I didn't bend. "You don't have to be in charge," I said. "You have to be respectful." He didn't answer. "I love you," I said, "but I will not live under your control again." He looked up. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," I said slowly, "if we have a relationship, it will be on equal ground. If not, there will be distance. The words felt heavy. Necessary. He swallowed. You'd really walk away? He asked. I already did, I replied gently. This is me deciding how far. We sat in silence for a long moment. People came and went around us. Life continued. Finally, Marcus stood up. I need time, he said. I nodded. Take it, I replied. He walked away without looking back. And this time, I didn't feel the need to follow. That night, I slept deeply. Not from exhaustion. From certainty. Over the next few days, something unexpected happened. Peace settled in. Not perfect, but real. I set up my own small place. Nothing fancy. Just enough. A bed near a window. A table where I could write. A chair where I could sit and think. Everything in it belonged to me. Helen helped me move in. She stood in the doorway and smiled. You did this, she said. Yes, I replied. I did. The phone rang later that evening. It was Marcus. I'm not ready, he said. I know, I replied. But I'm trying, he added. I closed my eyes. Trying is a start. I said. After we hung up, I sat quietly. I didn't celebrate. I didn't grieve. I just breathed. Marcus thought I was done for good. He thought age meant weakness. He thought silence meant surrender. But the world had shifted. And once it shifts, it never moves back the same way again. Tomorrow would bring the final step. Not away from him. Toward myself. The first morning I woke up in my own place, I lay still for a long time. Not because I was tired. Because I was listening. No footsteps outside my door. No voice calling my name. No one deciding what the day should be before I even opened my eyes. Just quiet. Not the heavy silence I used to live in. This was clean silence. The kind that waits for you to speak first. Sunlight spilled across the floor, soft and warm. I sat up slowly and let my feet touch the ground. The floor was cool, solid, real. I did this, I whispered. The words didn't feel proud. They felt grounding. I made myself breakfast. Simple, toast and tea. I ate at my small table by the window, watching the street wake up. People passed by with bags, coffee cups, children pulling at their hands. No one looked at me. And that felt like freedom too. Later that morning, I unpacked the last box. Inside were things Marcus never cared about. Old photos. Handwritten letters. A small radio I loved listening to in the evenings. I placed each item carefully, choosing where it belonged. Every choice felt important. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I didn't know how to reply, but because I realized something. I didn't feel rushed. I replied simply, I am. That was all. As the days passed, I settled into a rhythm. I walked every morning. I cooked when I felt like it. I rested without guilt. I reconnected with people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some apologized. Some admitted they didn't know how bad it had been. I forgave them, not for their sake. For mine. One afternoon, Lorna came by with groceries. You look different, she said, smiling. How? I asked. Lighter, she replied, like you put something heavy down. I nodded. I did, I said. It was called fear. But freedom is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly and waits to see if you trust it. And I was still learning how. A week later, Marcus asked to see me again. I just want to talk, he said on the phone. I thought about it carefully. Not out of fear. Out of self-respect. We can talk, I said, but with clear rules. Rules? He asked, surprised. Yes, I replied. Mine. We met again in public. A park this time. Open air, open space. He looked different. Tired. Smaller somehow. Not weak. Just no longer towering. I don't know who I am now, he said after a while. I listened. I built my life around managing you, he continued. And now I don't have that. I folded my hands in my lap. That was never your job, I said. I thought it was, he replied quietly. I know, I said. That's the problem. He looked at me. Really looked. Not as someone to correct. Not as someone to manage. As a woman sitting across from him. I'm scared, he admitted. I nodded. So was I said, but I didn't let that turn into control. There was a long pause. Then he asked the question I had been waiting for. What do you want from me now? I took a breath. I want respect, I said. I want honesty. And I want space when I ask for it. He swallowed. And if I can't give that, he asked. Then we love each other from a distance, I replied. That answer cost me something. I felt it. But it also freed me. Because love that demands erasure is not love. When we parted, there were no hugs. No tears. Just understanding. Incomplete. But real. That night, alone in my new home, I sat by the window again. I thought about my life before Marcus took over. How strong I had been then. How capable. I hadn't lost that woman. I had just been buried under someone else's fear. The next few weeks were full. Not busy. Full. I joined a small group for older women at the community center. We talked about life, mistakes, hopes. One woman said, I feel invisible. I reached for her hand. You're not, I said. You're just quiet right now. She smiled through tears. I began volunteering twice a week. Nothing big. Just listening. Helping. Being present. Each time I shared my story, someone leaned closer. Someone nodded. Someone whispered, that sounds like me. I realized then that my story was no longer just mine. It was a bridge. Marcus called less often. When he did, his voice was different. More careful. Not perfect, but changing. And that was enough. For now. One evening, as I washed dishes, I caught my reflection in the window. Older. Yes. But standing tall. Whole. I began again, I said softly. And I meant every word. Marcus thought I was done for good. That age had finished me. That fear had broken me. But I had begun again. Not louder. Not harder. Stronger. And tomorrow, I would finish this journey on my own terms. The morning I realized I was truly free did not arrive with fireworks. There was no applause. No grand announcement. No dramatic moment where everything suddenly felt perfect. It came quietly, like truth usually does. I was standing in my kitchen, holding a cup of tea, watching steam rise slowly into the air. The window was open just enough to let in the sound of birds and distant traffic. Life moving, life continuing. And for the first time in many years, my chest did not feel tight. No pressure. No fear. No need to brace myself. Just peace. I sat down at my small table and opened my notebook. The same one I had used to write down dates, words, memories, proof that I existed when someone tried to erase me. I flipped back to the first page. The handwriting there looked shaky now. Not weak. Just uncertain. I read the first sentence I had written weeks ago. My son says I am done. I closed the notebook gently. No, I said out loud. I was just getting started. Over the next few weeks, my life continued to settle into itself. Not into silence. Into strength. I woke up when my body felt ready. I chose what to eat. I decided where to go and when to rest. Small things, maybe, but each one was a reminder that my life belonged to me. Every choice was a stitch, sewing me back together. One afternoon, Helen came to visit. She stood in my doorway, smiling as she looked around. "You look good here," she said. "I feel good here," I replied. She hugged me tightly. "You know," she said, "you scared me for a long time." I pulled back slightly. "How?" I asked. "I thought you were disappearing," she admitted, "little by little." I nodded. "So did I said. We sat together and talked about old times, about our mother, about mistakes we made, about choices we wished we could change. Helen looked at me thoughtfully. "You're different now," she said. "I'm the same," I replied, "just uncovered." Marcus did not come around often. That was okay. When he did call, the conversations were short. Respectful. Careful. He no longer spoke over me. He no longer decided for me. And that alone told me everything. One day he asked quietly, "Do you hate me?" The question caught me off guard. I took a moment before answering. "No," I said, "but I won't disappear to make you comfortable." There was silence on the line. "I'm learning," he said. "I know," I replied. "So am I." That was the truth. I was learning how to live without apologizing for existing. And that took time. At the community center, I continued volunteering. One afternoon, a younger woman sat across from me, twisting her hands nervously. "My son says I'm too old to live alone," she said. "He says it's for my own good." I leaned forward. "And what do you think?" I asked gently. She hesitated. "I think I'm tired of being told who I am." I smiled. "That's how it starts," I said. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Did you go through this too?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, "and I survived it." Her shoulders relaxed just a little. "Hope does that." That night, I walked home slowly. The sky was painted with soft colors as the sun went down. I breathed deeply and felt the ground beneath my feet. I remembered a time when I felt like the ground could disappear at any moment. It didn't. I stayed. Later that evening, I stood in front of the mirror again. The same mirror. The same face. But the eyes looking back at me were different. They were steady. Certain. Alive. "You're still here," I said. And the woman in the mirror smiled. A few days later, I received a letter. Not official. Not legal. Just handwriting I recognized immediately. "Marcus." I sat down before opening it. Inside, the words were uneven, like he had struggled to write them. "I thought I was protecting you. I didn't realize I was hurting you. I'm sorry." I read it twice. Then a third time. I folded it carefully and placed it in my drawer. Not as forgiveness. As closure. That night, I slept peacefully. No dreams of fear. No racing thoughts. Just rest. Weeks turned into months. Life grew full in a quiet way. I planted flowers on my windowsill. I learned to enjoy afternoons alone. I laughed more, real laughter, the kind that comes from deep inside. And sometimes I cried. Not from pain. From release. One afternoon, I ran into someone from church at the grocery store. "You know," she said, "you inspired a lot of people." I raised an eyebrow. "I just told the truth," I replied. She smiled. "That's usually what inspires people." On my 73rd birthday, I celebrated quietly. Helen came, a few friends, a small cake. As we sat together, Helen lifted her glass. "To Alois," she said, "who began again." Everyone smiled. I felt my throat tighten. "Thank you," I said softly. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone by the window once more. The same window. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living. Marcus had thought I was done for good. He thought age meant weakness. He thought silence meant surrender. He thought control meant love. He was wrong. I had begun again. Stronger. Not because I fought, but because I remembered who I was. A woman. A mother. A person with a voice. And no one, no matter how close, had the right to take that away. If you're listening to my story right now, let me say this to you. It is never too late to begin again. It is never too late to speak. It is never too late to choose yourself. My son thought I was done for good. The next morning, I began again, stronger. And this time, I will never disappear again.